Joining us now via Skype, overseas in Amsterdam, the former chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, my old congressional colleague, Pete Hoekstra. Pete, there's this new congressional report. When you couple that with the fact that over this weekend, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, warned on the rise of American terrorists. Terrorists heading to Iraq right now, but one day returning here with American passports. Pete, in your mind, how genuine is the threat to our homeland?
Oh, I think the threat is very, very genuine. When you get Senator Feinstein, when you get CRS, and I believe that there have also been reports and briefings out of the intelligence community, all warning of this new caliphate state in Iraq potentially being a breeding and a launching pad for attacks against the United States. I take it very seriously, and I think it's a very realistic expectation.
Pete, we take a look, and there have been reports that there is a considerable Somali community in Minnesota, other Arab expatriates, Middle East expatriates living in your home state of Michigan. How many folks do you think, folks, that's almost too quaint a term, how many would-be terrorists are leaving the United States to go take up arms there in Iraq and Syria?
Well, that's hard to gauge right now. I don't know if the U.S. intelligence community or the FBI has really published a number on that, but I can tell you here in the Netherlands, we've been here for a little over a week. I've had an opportunity to meet with some of their counterterrorism experts, people that I developed a relationship with when I was in Congress out of the Netherlands. They're saying, it could be, it's in the dozens. In the UK and Germany, it's in the hundreds. And out of France, they're thinking that there may be up to 2,000 folks who have joined the fight, not only in Iraq, but the fight in Syria and Iraq, the greater battleground there throughout the Middle East. So, to say realistically, possibly in the dozens in the United States, I don't think would be an exaggeration. The real question is, what's the top number on there? We know and have expectations, in the dozens, but how many more are there really?
Pete, there's an old saying in sports, you can't tell the players without a program. And we take a look at what is going on in Iraq and Syria. And the civil war in Syria has blurred the lines, I maintain, for a lot of Americans. It's tough to tell the guys who ostensibly are allies from those who are our enemies. Are we still in a situation where in Syria we're helping insurgents who may be affiliated with the same groups that are coming in and tearing Iraq asunder once they cross what used to be an international border?
I think that's an excellent question, JD, because right now we're saying in the discussion in Washington is we're going to help the guys in the middle, the moderate Islamists, the moderate radicals who are trying to throw out Assad. But then you get into Iraq, and who's over there in Iraq helping us now prop up the Maliki government? Assad. Who's trying to undermine it? It's ISIS from Syria. And I think you're exactly right. It's hard to tell who the players are and who we should be helping. The only thing that we do know is that, the moderates who we quote unquote were helping in Libya never were able to take control of the country. That fell to the jihadists. And if we believe that we can equip moderates in Syria to overthrow Assad and defeat ISIS, I think we're really kidding ourselves.
Pete, we take a look at polling, and I believe the numbers, latest public opinion poll, 49% of Americans say America really is not to blame for the situation in Iraq. And essentially, the polling leads me to infer that these Americans are calling for a hands-off attitude. Now, you and I, it used to be an occupational hazard for us on the ballot every 2 years in Congress. We would pay more than casual attention to American public opinion. Mindful of the emerging, I don't know if you could call it a consensus, but a considerable number of Americans saying we just need to step away from Iraq. What is your feeling? Is there anything militarily, covertly we can do to slow this down? Should we even be trying to do so given what is happening there now?
Oh, I think we absolutely need to be doing, we need to be in there and we need to be trying to stop this caliphate from forming. This is a real and significant threat. It will continue to grow. I think the real problem here is that the American public has seen our foreign policy and how we're trying to deal with jihadists become a political hot potato. Obama and the Democrats bashing Bush from 2005 through 2008 and totally destroying conservatives on the issue of foreign policy. And now this president struggling with how to implement a very different foreign policy. I'm not surprised at all that the American people are saying, you know, forget it. We don't want to be involved in this. Republicans can't handle it. Democrats can't handle it. It's time to put this genie back in the bottle, develop a coherent policy to deal with this threat, and stop making it a political hot potato.
All right, I'm interested now in the Hoekstra strategy, because on one hand you have former Vice President Dick Cheney saying we need to put 20,000 troops at least in there. You have the president sending 300, quote, advisors. You've got folks like Pat Buchanan and Rand Paul saying we really don't need anybody in there. Pete, would you put a number for it? What is the right policy now as the unraveling of Iraq continues?
Well, I think the right policy, number one, is for Republicans and Democrats, this administration, to finally acknowledge that radical jihadists are a threat, call them out the way that Senator Feinstein has been doing for the last 6 months, and recognize that we need to put forward a strategy to confront them. For this president then to engage with people like Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and develop a coherent strategy that says Republicans and Democrats agree on this strategy. And it's not a 6-month strategy. It's not a 24-month strategy, but it is a long-term strategy to defeat a long-term threat. That is the kind of action that I would be calling for today. Because you're also now, at one point I want to bring out, you're also now starting to see infighting within the Obama administration. You remember last week you and I were talking about, is this an intelligence failure? And now the intelligence community is starting in its own way to fight back and saying, hey, wait a minute. We warned this administration 6 months, 9 months ago about the increasing threat from ISIS, and they decided to do nothing. And I can tell you, when you get the CIA and the intelligence community on the other side going to war figuratively against their own administration, that's a very, very bad place, not only for the administration to be, but for America to be. America's divided, and somehow we need some leadership to bring us back together.
Pete, I want to switch topics. Sudan, Christian persecution. We heard earlier this week the Christian bride who was slated to be hanged had been released. There was a court decision. Then she, her husband, their kids went to an airport, tried to board a plane and flee the Sudan. She was rearrested. Do you have a handle on what's going on there?
No, I think what's going on there is similar to what's going on throughout the Middle East. All these governments are persecuting religious minorities. It's happening in Egypt, Iraq, Syria, and all of these places. This is one. And remember, this woman, while she is not an American citizen, her kids are, 2 kids, and her husband are. This is one where the State Department shouldn't be taking anything but yes, they're on their way home for an answer. There needs to be a tremendous amount of pressure put on this government, the Sudanese government, to release this woman, her children, and her husband, and put them on a plane and get them into safety here in the United States. But for every person like this that is at the front page, that is on the headlines, there are thousands more who are being persecuted and being killed each and every day.
Pete, only a minute remains. We look at more abductions in Nigeria, a report of 60 girls and women and 30 boys abducted, we presume, by Boko Haram. Is Nigeria powerless to stop that? About 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I talked about this a few months ago. They couldn't get the 200 women back, or 270. They can't do anything here. They need international help, and they need to admit it.
Pete Hoekstra, former chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, we thank you for weighing in from Amsterdam. And time doesn't permit us to ask how you have that bucolic scene of Florida behind you, but We appreciate our Dutch allies accommodating us at Newsmax headquarters here in South Florida, and we'll be back to you again real soon. Thanks so much for Skyping in. All right, so the question is, you heard Pete talk about public opinion and foreign policy. Where do you stand on Iraq? Tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #Americas Forum. There's also email and Facebook.